It was an ordinary morning in a modern city. Cars sped by like arrows. The sidewalks throbbed with haste. On every face, the reflection of the same mission: to arrive, to get to work, to the goal, to the next step. But no one seemed to know what lay beyond that. Amidst the concrete skyscrapers, a profound silence hung, as if all that movement hid something absent. People talked about progress, but none of them seemed truly alive. Max Weber, more than a century ago, already felt this emptying of the air. He called it the disenchantment of the world. Not in the sense that magic has disappeared, but that meaning has dissolved. Before, human beings lived surrounded by symbols, mysteries, and rituals. Religion, myth, community, all offered an invisible guiding thread, something that connected the soul to the cosmos. Today, what guides us are algorithms. What moves us is the clock, and what defines us, maybe just our badge. But how did we get here? Weber shows us that modernity has given us a double gift. On the one hand, it has freed man from irrational fear, from the bonds of blind tradition, from imposed dogma. On the other, it has destroyed the symbolic pillars that sustained life. The world has become a machine, efficient, yes, but soulless. There is no longer room for the inexplicable, and along with this, the sacred has been replaced by statistics. Poetry has given way to protocol, and man has become a function. The progress that seemed to lead us to a technical paradise has dragged us into a new prison, an existence that knows how to operate, but has forgotten why it lives. And perhaps the cruelest thing about this prison is its silence. There are no visible chains, no screams, only the absence of questions. After all, questioning requires stopping. And stopping nowadays is almost a crime. Weber invites us to face this void, not with despair, but with lucidity. He does not shout. He observes. He describes, as if watching a grand spectacle slowly being dismantled from within. And this is the truth that is frightening. Modernity did not fail because it did not work. It failed because it worked too well. Because in the midst of so many systems, we have forgotten the essential, the why. And maybe that's why you feel so tired, even after you've slept, so confused, even when everything looks right on paper. Maybe deep down, you're hearing a whisper. Something has been lost, something essential, and there's no app that can get it back for you. This is just the beginning. For millennia, human beings knelt before something greater. It could be a bonfire, a temple, or a mountain. It didn't matter what name it was given. They called it Zeus, Yahweh, Allah, Spirit, Destiny. What mattered was that life had an axis, something that supported the invisible. Decisions were not made out of self-interest alone, but out of fear. There was mystery in everything, and where there was mystery, there was meaning. Weber calls this an enchanted world. In it, phenomena were not only physical, but also spiritual. Illness could be a punishment. A bountiful harvest could be a blessing. And suffering had a purpose. It was not a better world, it was a more symbolic world. Over time, however, this lens was removed. Science advanced, religions lost ground, rational knowledge took the throne, and with that, the gods were deposed one by one. But there was no celebration, no complete freedom. What was left in place of the gods was calculation. What was profound became metrics. What was sacred became utilitarian. And what was inexplicable became irrelevant. Today, what matters is what can be measured, sold, optimized. If it is of no use, it is of no use. And if it does not generate profit, it does not deserve space. The paradox of modernity is that it killed myths but gave us no substitutes. It took away the sky but did not expand the soul. It created a land of certainties but did not offer peace. And at its core, that is what disenchantment is all about. It is not the absence of magic, but the death of mystery as a source of value. Weber saw this clearly. He was not a moralist, nor a fanatic of tradition. He was a sociologist, observing a world in transition. And what he saw was a deep rift between man and the sacred. Before, one's vocation was a response to God's call. Today, vocation is a position. Before, ethics was an invisible guide. Now, ethics has become a contractual clause. The gods have died, but we haven't stopped worshipping them. We've just changed the altars. Now, we worship the image, the perfect body, the impeccable resume, the full bank account, the digital status, and the cruelest thing, we do it without realizing it, as if it were natural, as if it had always been this way, as if we weren't burying the meaning of being alive every day. And the emptiness? It continues, silent, hidden behind stories, swallowed up by goals, camouflaged among achievements. It's the kind of emptiness that no one talks about, but that almost everyone carries, because deep down, the soul knows something was lost along the way, something that no modern achievement has managed to bring back. Max Weber saw work as sacred. In his work on the Protestant ethic, he reminds us of a time when work was a spiritual expression. One's craft was not just a means of survival, but a calling, a vocation. The baker made bread as if he were serving God. The craftsman shaped wood with reverence. The teacher, the doctor, the farmer, all were part of a larger, invisible but meaningful machine. But over time, this flame was extinguished. Work, which was once a bridge between heaven and earth, became a cage. And it is no coincidence that Weber coined the expression, iron cage. He was referring to this modern world where work has lost its soul and has become blind routine, impersonal calculation, and repetitive procedure. Vocation has become function, and mission has become goal. Modern society has taught us that we must work to achieve success. But it rarely asks, success at what? And at what cost? How many people today live a life of exhausting effort with decent pay, but completely devoid of purpose? They wake up, produce, deliver, and go home feeling like they've just survived another day. Weber saw this risk with surgical precision. He said that modern rationalization would lead the individual to become a mere screw in a large system, a replaceable part. And that is exactly what we see today. Professions that no longer require vocation, only technique. Companies that no longer demand passion, only performance. And people who no longer live with purpose, they just operate. The most perverse thing is that this system continues to work. And perhaps it works too well. The problem is that, in this perfect functioning, the human soul has been forgotten. What is measured is the result, never the meaning. What is rewarded is productivity, not enthusiasm. What is demanded is delivery, not truth. Have you ever stopped to think why so many people dream of leaving everything behind? Why do the most watched videos on the internet show people leaving the city, changing their lives, living what they love? Because deep down, there is a collective cry, muffled but insistent. We were not made to function. We were made to create, to serve with soul, to exist with meaning. But the system doesn't want that. It prefers that you continue to do your job, that you accept the position, that you settle for the salary, that you trade your dreams for stability, because a human being with an awakened vocation threatens the order. He thinks, he creates, he disturbs, and the modern system hates anything that gets out of control. Max Weber invites us to reverse this logic, to look at our profession and ask, is there still a calling here? Or am I just obeying a machine that swallows me more and more each day? Max Weber believed that the greatest risk of modernity was not collapse, it was perfect functioning. The modern world is a colossal machine that never stops, even when the hearts of those around it are failing. A machine that is unmoved. It does not hesitate, it does not question, it just turns and turns and turns. The current system is cold, technical, and indifferent. And the more it advances, the more human beings are reduced to workers of the invisible. What was once human has become a process. What was once art has become a system. What was once a gesture has become a protocol. We no longer talk to people, we talk to sectors, to platforms, to automatic assistants, each person in their own space, each task in its own time, and if possible, with no room for error, but also no room for the soul. Weber called this rationalization, the logic of calculation, efficiency, and predictability taking over everything. This logic is effective, but it is heartless. It transforms the world into something manageable, but also dehumanized. A hospital can see 1,000 patients a day. A court can hear hundreds of cases. A teacher can grade piles of papers. But where is the human being in all this? In an attempt to organize everything, we disorganize the essential. We transform life into tasks, relationships into contracts, feelings into algorithms. Love has become statistics. Pain has become diagnoses. Existence has become spreadsheets. And when someone tries to interrupt this machine, to stop, take a breath, ask questions, it is seen as inefficient, unproductive, even dangerous. Because the machine does not like pauses. Pauses reveal cracks. Questions open chasms. And the modern system was not made for chasms, it was made for routines. This social machine continues, even when no one knows why. The employee works without believing in what he does. The politician legislates without listening to the people. The student studies without understanding the meaning. But everything continues, because functioning has become the new God. The result has become the new commandment. And that's where the disenchantment deepens, because there's no one else driving. There's no more wisdom, just control. There's no more vocation, just position. There's no more mission, just goal. We're trapped in a logic that turns on its own, and that has already forgotten why it started. Weber knew that this iron cage did not need bars. It feeds on its own logic, on habit, on inertia, on the fear of stopping. And perhaps that is why so many keep going, even without direction. Because getting out of the machine requires more than courage. It requires rediscovering the human within the automatic. And few are ready for this reunion. There is something subtle, almost imperceptible, that has been ripped from the modern world. The ability to be amazed. That which made human beings stop before a tree, a sunset or a musical note, and feel without understanding. It was the feeling that there was something there beyond the visible, something that touched the soul, something that could not be put into formulas. But this feeling has been dehydrated. Modern science, with all its precision and usefulness, has also taught man to doubt what cannot be proven. And when mystery became synonymous with ignorance, we stopped contemplating in order to classify. The sky stopped being the dwelling place of the gods and became just a gaseous layer. The shooting star lost its charm and became space debris. Love became chemistry. Spirituality became statistics. Max Weber warned, "We live in a time where everything can be explained, but almost nothing is truly felt." And that is when disenchantment sets in. Not as a cry, but as an emptying. Things continue to exist, but they have lost their depth. Rituals still exist, but they have lost their soul. Life still goes on, but as repetition, not as revelation. This rationalization of the world has made us masters of analysis and illiterates of meaning. We know how to diagnose, but not understand. We know how to decode, but not feel. And this is not just an existential problem, it is a collective tragedy. Because a society that no longer feels, that is no longer enchanted, is also not indignant. It does not mobilize. It does not dream. Weber was not against science. He knew its value, but he saw that when it becomes the only lens on reality, it suffocates other forms of knowledge. Poetry, faith, myth, intuition, all of these are discredited. And with that, part of the human being dies. The modern human being begins to live on the shallow plane of functions. He eats, he sleeps, he produces. But inside him, something remains immobile, a kind of anesthesia of the soul. This is why so many seek out extreme experiences, why so many people embark on retreats, rituals, extreme travel, alternative therapies. It's not just a search for novelty, it's a desperate attempt to feel something real, something that cannot be measured, something that awakens what has been dormant. The soul wants to live again. It wants to come out of anesthesia. It wants to re-enchant what has been desacralized. And this is perhaps the most profound point of Weber's critique. We have not only lost the mystery, we have lost the ability to live with it. And in losing that, we have also lost our humility in the face of what we cannot control. Modern knowledge has given us power, but it has taken the ground from under our feet. We are giants of technology and children in spirit. Before, the human being was a unit. Even in the midst of pain, scarcity, and limitations, he or she carried within him or herself a coherence. Family, faith, work, culture, territory, everything was part of an integrated fabric. There was a center that kept the parts connected. The person knew where they came from, who they were, where they were going. Meaning was not just a search, it was the ground itself. But this ground has cracked. Modernity has brought fragmentation. Life has been separated into drawers. One for work, another for leisure, another for relationships, another for spirituality, if it still exists. And the modern person has come to live as if they change masks all day long. In each environment, a function. In each social network, a persona. In each group, a role. Max Weber saw this clearly. For him, the process of rationalization has dissolved the wholeness of the human being. Instead of living in an integrated way, modern man lives in compartments. The doctor who saves lives cannot save his own marriage. The teacher who inspires students is plunged into anguish. The artist who moves crowds sleeps alone with existential crises. Each part of life is isolated, as if there were no connection between them. This creates a new kind of suffering, the suffering of being many, and being no one at the same time. You can be competent, admired, sought after, and still not recognize yourself in the mirror. Because the pieces do not form a whole. They are pieces floating in different realities, seamlessly. It is as if the soul had been sliced, and no piece was enough on its own. Modernity has taught us to perform, to adapt, to survive socially, but it has not taught us to inhabit our own being, and perhaps that is why so many feel lost even when surrounded by everything. Because what has been lost is not outside, it is inside. It is in the rupture between what one is and what one shows. It is in the abyss between the face and the essence. Weber spoke of a man without spirit, without heart and without freedom, a being who acts without knowing why, who works without loving, who lives without meaning, not out of malice, but because he is trapped in a structure that does not allow him to be whole, a structure that demands efficiency but not authenticity, that values results but not integrity. And the result of this? An epidemic of disconnection. People no longer know how to put their parts back together. They run after therapies, courses, gurus, diagnoses, formulas, in the hope of feeling whole again. But they don't always realize that the problem isn't in them, but in the way the world has taught them to live. Recovering wholeness is perhaps the greatest act of rebellion today. Being whole in a world that fragments you requires courage. And it requires silence. Because only in silence is it possible to hear what still beats deep down. The forgotten part, the living center, the lost thread. The gods have not disappeared, they have simply changed their clothes. The modern altar has no candles or incense. It shines in shop windows, parades on screens, displays numbers on bank accounts. The new gods are made of metal, glass, and paper, and worshipping them does not require faith. It requires comparison. Today, worship is not about bending the knee, it is about swiping and wishing for the life of another. Max Weber realized that with the death of the traditional sacred, human beings did not become freer, they became more vulnerable. The absence of a spiritual center did not leave us at peace, it left us exposed. And in this symbolic void, new idols emerged. But these do not liberate, they enslave with elegance. Consumption has become a religion. There are liturgies, launches, queues, boxes, unboxings. There are temples, shopping malls, apps, advertisements. And there are promises, instant happiness, reinforced identity, guaranteed belonging. But it is all ephemeral. Soon comes the next trend, the next need, the next desire. Because consumption does not want to satisfy you, it wants to keep you thirsty. The image has also become a divinity. We worship sculpted bodies, impeccable faces, and edited lives. Social networks are showcases of staged existences. And the more we show, the less we are. Truth has been replaced by performance. Intimacy has become content. Loneliness has become engagement. And those who don't show disappear. These idols are seductive. They don't instill fear like the old gods. They offer rewards, status, admiration, belonging, but they come at a high price. They demand your attention, your constant comparison, your daily self-criticism. They demand that you never be enough, that you never stop, that you never be complete. Weber saw all this as the inevitable result of a society that had lost its spiritual axis. He was not nostalgic for tradition, but he understood that man needs a center, something that transcends the immediate, something that gives unity to existence. Without it, we fall prey to any empty promise, to any artificial glitter. Today, idols are silent but powerful. They don't tell you to pray, they make you buy. They don't demand sacrifice, they offer distraction. But in the end, they take what is most precious: your time, your truth, your inner silence. And even though you are surrounded by everything, you feel alone. Even though you are seen, you feel invisible. Because no modern idol can do what the ancients did, connect you to mystery. No luxury, however expensive, can give what the sacred gave: meaning. And this is what Weber shouts with his silent writing. It is not comfort that destroys man. It is comfort without meaning, pleasure without roots, conquest without direction. In silence, a new kind of longing grows within people. It is not longing for a place, someone, or a specific time. It is longing for a way of life that they may never have known, longing for a life with less haste, with more soul, a life in which gestures had value, words had weight, silence was shelter. Max Weber understood this feeling as the echo of disenchantment. Modernity has killed the great myths, but it has not quenched the thirst they quenched. And today, this thirst has turned into restlessness. We see people abandoning cities, selling everything and moving to the countryside. They are looking for a clearing, a country house, a calm sea. They are not just escaping from routine. They are trying to return to something they cannot name. There is a tiredness that does not come from the body, but from the soul. A sickness of screens, of noise, of empty speeches. And in this vacuum, the desire for spirituality is born, not in the institutionalized sense, but as a reconnection. Reconnection with the body, with nature, with something greater. Technology has shown man how the world works, but it has not taught him how to live in it. This nostalgia is diffuse because it has no address. It is the kind of longing you feel when you hear an old song, when you walk alone on a silent street, when you see a child playing without knowing the time. It is the call of the forgotten part, the memory that life was more than deliveries and achievements. It was presence, it was connection, it was enchantment. But how can we go back if we no longer know the way? Modernity has cut up the mass. The sacred has been discredited. The symbolic has been ridiculed. Tradition has been reduced to backwardness. And now, what remains is this modern void disguised as freedom. We are free to do everything except to find ourselves again. Many try to fill this void with alternative spiritualities, quick meditations, and short retreats. And there is nothing wrong with that, but Weber would warn us, the risk is to transform even the spiritual search into a product, into yet another consumer experience, into yet another item on the self-improvement list. And so, even what was sacred becomes a commodity. The way out is not to run off into the woods or delete social media. It is to recover within oneself the space of mystery, to relearn how to ask questions without rushing for an answer, to contemplate without the need to explain, to be without the obligation to produce. Because the return to meaning will not be geographical, it will be symbolic, it will be spiritual, it will be a return to essence. Weber makes us see that deep down, what we seek is not an idealized past, it is a future with a soul, a time when progress does not cost the spirit, when advancement does not trample the being, when we can walk without fear of stopping, feel without shame, believe without having to justify, live, in short, as someone who still remembers why they came. Weber never promised consolation. He offered no formulas, no easy hope. On the contrary, his words are harsh. because the reality he describes is harsh. But within the harshness of his thought, there is a hidden spark, a silent suggestion that even in a world without gods, it is still possible to live with dignity. Even when everything seems empty, it is still possible to create meaning, not to inherit it, to create it. This creation requires something that modernity does not value: responsibility. Weber spoke of the ethics of conviction and the ethics of responsibility. The former concerns non-negotiable principles, living according to what one believes. The latter concerns awareness of the impact of one's choices on the world. Together, they form the heart of meaningful action, acting not on impulse, not on habit, but on conscious choice. That is true freedom. In a society that trains us to obey algorithms, follow trends, and repeat behaviors, acting responsibly and with conviction is a revolutionary act. It means saying, I choose my path even without the guarantee of success. I carry my burden. Even without the promise of applause, I act even if no one sees. And in doing so, the individual rescues a spark of what was lost, the soul of human action. Weber knew that the modern world had become a symbolic desert. But he also knew that in this desert, the individual may be the last guardian of the fire of meaning, the fire of choice, the fire of faith, not necessarily in the religious sense, but in the faith that living with purpose is still possible. Even without a starry sky, there is still ground to stand on. And where there is ground, there is a path. That is why Weber does not offer us a return to the past. He challenges us to build something new, a new way of being in the world, a way that does not depend on blind tradition or impersonal systems, but rather on the inner courage to be whole, to carry on a silent vocation even when the world laughs, to seek coherence even when everything encourages disguise. This path will not be validated by likes, nor recognized by algorithms. It will not generate headlines or gain status, but it will bring something that modernity has forgotten: inner peace. And this peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the alignment between what one does and what one believes, between what one shows and what one is. Weber reminds us that, even in a disenchanted world, man can enchant his own steps. He can transform the most banal gesture into a symbolic act. He can work, love, decide, as if he were responding to an invisible call. There is no need to recover the old gods. All he needs to do is recover himself. Max Weber never believed that the world would ever be enchanted again as it was before. He was not a naive dreamer, nor was he nostalgic for the old days. He understood the depth of change. Disenchantment was not a mistake of modernity. It was its natural consequence. The advance of reason killed myths, and with them, the compass that guided man. But what he subtly proposes is a new type of enchantment, not of the world, but of the gaze. In a universe where everything can be explained, mystery needs to be chosen. It is the human being who now needs to give soul back to what surrounds him. Not because reality has changed, but because he has changed. The meaning that was once given now needs to be created. It is a more difficult, more solitary task, but infinitely more authentic. Weber doesn't write to console. He writes to awaken. An awakening is almost always uncomfortable. It's realizing that the routine that keeps you alive on the outside may be killing you on the inside. It's admitting that a successful career can be an escape from emptiness. It's looking in the mirror and realizing that you lost yourself trying to be too efficient. But within this discomfort, there is power. Because only those who feel emptiness can seek fulfillment. Only those who recognize fragmentation can seek wholeness. Only those who admit that they no longer find meaning can finally begin to build it, no longer with the tools of the world, but with the truth of their own soul. The flame, then, is not outside. It is not in the ancient gods, nor in the modern idols. It is inside. And this flame is fragile, silent, almost imperceptible. But it is also indestructible. It is the one that whispers when all seems lost. It is the one that shines when you do something with soul, even if no one sees it. It is the one that warms you when you live truthfully, even without applause. Max Weber doesn't give us a map. He gives us a vision, a brutal but honest understanding that we live in an age without a center, without a mystique, without a symbolic ground. But he also gives us a responsibility to be the exception, to be the one who lights his own lantern in the dark, to be the one who walks without a crowd, without a stage, without a manual, but with purpose. And perhaps this is the true reunion with meaning, not returning to what was, not waiting for external salvation, but awakening to a type of life that, even without heavenly promises, still carries value. A life in which the simple can be sacred, in which the ordinary can be profound, in which the gesture can be a vocation. The modern world may have killed the old sense, but it has not killed the soul that seeks. And as long as there are those who seek, there will be sparks, there will be questions, there will be resistance, there will be, in the middle of the rational desert, a heart that beats, and a spirit that, even silent, refuses to die. If this video made you rethink the world around you, and especially within yourself, then leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't provide easy answers, but we do raise questions that society has stopped asking. Activate the bell so you don't miss any episodes. Because in times of inner silence, thinking is an act of resistance.